Hello and welcome to the second in our edition of ZOUD. ZOUD stands for Zone of Uncomfortable Debate. And this is where we're creating a space where we're having open, honest and authentic discussions around some of those difficult and sensitive topics that are around in the workplace, in society as a whole. We want to, what I say, liberate the great thing about open speech. Well, today we're asking that crucial question: where do you belong? How many times has someone asked you that question? In fact, how many times have you been asked that question in the last week or so? Why don't you put it in the chat in terms of belonging? And I always say that belonging is quite subjective, and we're going to really approach this topic from an intersectional point of view, where we're going to look at it through generational diversity. We're looking at it from gender diversity and also from ethnicity diversity. So this is going to be set to be a really good podcast. Please do stay watching and listening. Now, I just want to introduce four amazing guests that have agreed to come on. They've been handpicked, dare I say, they're handpicked, and they have come from different organizations. I want to, first of all, introduce Alex Douglas. She is the founder of Sunshine Creative Soul and is head of the photography and video company. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, Sylvia, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Great to have you on. Thank you. And then secondly, I want to introduce Shimul Haider. Shimul is head of equality, diversity and inclusion at Norfolk and Waveney ICB, a wonderful woman that I have connected with from last year. And she is really excited to have a fellow practitioner on that's going to help us to unpick this. Welcome, Shimul.
Thank you. Hi. Hello, everybody.
And then I want to introduce, now this lady, she just stuck out to me on LinkedIn, and so glad that I had confirmation that this woman has got a lot to say in this space. She's going places. Her name is Jute Ajayi. She's head of new business. She's a head new business manager at BYP Networks. Now, if you don't know about them, check them out on LinkedIn. Up and coming organization that's really pushing through professionals. Jute, thank you so much for being on ZOUD.
Thank you for having me, Sylvia.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And last, but certainly not least, I call him my soulmate, my buddy from Integrated Care 24. It's Alistair Betts. He's Regional Quality Director. I'm an amazing man. He's got a lot to say. We do a lot of work together. And I should say that he was one of the pioneers when I first started rolling out diversity, equity and inclusion at IC24. He was one of the first group of senior managers to say we need to become more inclusive managers here, and really kind of chased me down, if you like, to get a plan locally. So it's really great. So everyone, welcome to ZOUD.
Hi.
So yeah, so I'm gonna ask you all a question, and the first question that I'm going to ask you is this: when we're talking about belonging, as I said before, it is quite subjective. People have different views as to what belonging is. So if you had to name one word that describes belonging, what would it be and why? So let me ask that first to Shimul.
So my one word would be acceptance. I think in order to feel as though you belong, you need to feel that you're accepted, be that, within your personal relationships, or within your work relationships, that then you need to feel that you belong to something, that you have a contribution to make, that you feel a valued member of that particular group.
Wow, I like that. Acceptance. Thank you. And Alex?
Mine would be home, definitely. Where I feel most at home, where I can be completely myself, or who I can be completely myself around. So yeah, definitely like a comfortable, homey feeling. So I'd say home.
Wow, right. I'm loving that. Never heard that one before as well. So that just goes to show the diversity. Alistair?
So for me, my word would be confidence, and not feeling vulnerable in any way, but confident with my voice and my membership.
Wonderful. So far we've had acceptance, home, confidence. Last but not least, Jute, what's your word?
My word would be authentic or authenticity. So being who you are, staying true to who you are, regardless of whatever situation, professional room you find yourself in.
Yeah, so those are some powerful, powerful words. We've had acceptance, and as I was hearing that, I was thinking, how do I know that I'm accepted? What does it feel like? What should it look like? And I suspect if I was to go around again, people would have different views as to what acceptance is. The same for home. Why do I feel that belonging is home? Confidence. How do I get belonging through confidence? I liked what Alistair said about, vulnerability, but part of the whole journey is probably about some vulnerability in order to achieve belonging. And then this authenticity, and it takes courage. It takes courage to be able to have and to embrace belonging, especially if it's something that is outside of our comfort zone. Tell us about your previous experiences of belonging. And I'm going to start out with Alistair.
So I've had lots of opportunities of feeling belonged and belonging in lots of different groups, and sharing a life with different people in different settings, whether that was as a very young person cooking and catering, or whether that was working in the Church of England, a traditional church setting, or whether that was being brought up in inner city. Lots of opportunities for belonging, and have learned a tremendous amount from all those experiences across the country.
Yeah, so Alistair, let me just ask you another question. What have you learned then? Because you said there were lots of opportunities, you mentioned inner city, but give us an example of one thing that you have learned.
That belonging has given me security, and it's taught me to be to really feel safe, and to rely on that safety and that security when I have felt vulnerable, and when I have gone into a new group of belonging.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting, lots of people feel that white men cannot feel a lack of sense of belonging, but we're going to find out that actually that's not true. We're going to hear more from Alistair shortly. Alex?
Okay, so it's not a negative response, but I would say that I've never truly felt I've belonged to anywhere or anyone, anything. But as time is going on, I'm learning that those moments do come up in moments. So it is a momentary thing. I mean, if I were to talk about my passport, it's white British, but I do not resonate with being British at all. I don't really get excited about the monarchy. I don't really sing and dance about being British ever, to be honest. So in that respect, I don't really feel like I belong in my own country, which is probably a shock for some people to hear. But I mean, I feel I belong at home. When I'm at home, I feel homey. In certain jobs I've had growing up, I've felt confident as time has gone on. But again, there's not been a belonging. I feel most at home, like I said before, when I'm at church or just within my own faith, really. That's probably where I feel most comfortable, yeah.
Wow. And I think some people are going to say, what? What? You don't feel like you belong to your own country. But again,
Yeah.
we're talking about belonging and what gives us individually that personal sense of belonging. And then let me come to Shimul.
So I've always, throughout my entire life, struggled with having a sense of belonging. So if I kind of link it back to the word that I used, which was acceptance. And for me, I've always, even from a very young age as a child, I've always felt a need to feel that I belonged and that I was accepted, and not left out and not left to feel isolated. So if I think back to school, like even when I was as young as like 11, 12, being part of a gang. I mean, I'm not really even a gang kind of girl, but I felt a need to be part of a gang, because then I felt like I belonged to something, and I fitted in. And I've always felt that I needed to make sure that I fit in somewhere. And I don't know whether that's partly because of my background and my ethnicity, but even now, when I think about where I live at the minute, which is in a very white village in rural Warwickshire, when I first arrived here 5 years ago, it was important for me to feel like I fitted in, that they accepted me for who I am. So yeah, it's always been a struggle for me, and it's something that I don't think will ever go away, feeling that need to that I belong somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, and we're gonna unpick that just a little bit later. Thank you so much. That need that people from Black minority ethnic communities could feel that they need to fit in. Where's that need coming from? Why do we feel that we need to fit in? And then last but not least, Jute.
I think mine's slightly different in terms of the fact that I never really felt the need to be accepted. I was kind of always accepted for who I was, regardless of where I grew up. I was born and raised in Nigeria, moved over to this country, and growing up in South London, it's a multicultural area. It was always nice. I had a wide range of friends. And I guess my sort of story is a little bit negative in a way, because it was the very first time I felt like I didn't belong in this country and in my role. So it was I guess you could call it my dream role. I had obsessed about this company, wanted to work for this conglomerate of a organization, managed to get the job. And in the first week of being in that space, it was shocking. Shocking is the best way to describe it. I've worked in organizations where I am the only Black female there, or I am the only person of color, but I'd never felt like I didn't belong. But for some reason in that particular role, I did. And I remember very quickly in my first week of being there, I was approached by another person of color and asked, where'd you come from? Where are you from? And I was like, oh, I'm from London. No, you're not. And I was like, I am from London. And it was kind of like, well, no, you're not. So this individual was from Australia, but was of Asian descent. And I found it really it was really, really difficult for me because, one, I was in a space which was also in London. So it was weird for someone that didn't come from the area or come from the country to ask me that sort of question. And she just kept going on and on and on. And I was like, well, I'm from London. There's different parts of London. Yeah, but I know South London. I'm like, my South London is different to Southwest London. We all speak very differently, look different in some cases, and act different. So that was a situation that was really, really difficult for me. And I believe I was in my mid-20s and I had never, ever, ever come across, and I'd worked in so many different places. And that was the first thing. Until today, it still hurts talking about it. Wow. Because I'd never experienced it. I'd never been the odd one out until that point.
What is your response when people ask you, where are you from? What do you say to people if they meet you and they say, oh, where you're from? What do you normally say? Alex?
I'd say I'm from Reading, Berkshire. It's somewhere that I'm not proud of to say, because there's nothing in this town or this country that I particularly resonate with or get excited about. So I just bring it back to myself and just say a bit about myself. But yeah, I always just say from Reading, UK. I say my dad is English, my mum is Italian, and kind of just leave it there.
And do you go into that ethnicity? Because I think this is probably where we're getting into, you know, the motive behind people asking, where are you from? There must be a motive why people are asking. So let me ask Shimul. Shimul, you've just talked about this wonderful life that you're having. I think of Vicar of Dibley when I think about the part of the network that you're from. But when people say to you, you're in the village green, you know, and they say, you know, where are you from? What do you say?
It's interesting, really, because I you know, instinctively I sound from Leicester, which is where I am from. I'm from Leicester, but I never really question the kind of I guess the background to the question that they're asking me. It's only if they really probe that I kind of always retort with a similar question, as in, what do you mean when you ask that question? Because I think it does, it has different connotations, doesn't it? Where you're from, to me, is where I'm from, but it might mean something different to them. So I always ask for a bit of clarification, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Why they're asking the question.
Yeah, because it's motive. I'm going to ask Alistair and then Jute to jump in. This question about where are you from? So, Alistair, if somebody, I definitely know people may well ask you where you're from. Anything on this?
So interestingly, listening to people talking about the question, where are you from? Sometimes I wish somebody would ask me the question, where are you from? Because I'm hardly ever asked it. And I would think that the person would be interested in me. Oh, somebody's asking me where I'm from. They're interested in me, but I'm hardly ever asked the question. Only if my northern accent provokes some response am I asked, but that is very, very rare. And having lived not in a northern area of the country for a long, long time, I guess I'm even asked less so. So in a way, I wish somebody would ask me that, and I'm trying to tune into what it would feel like to be asked that, where perhaps somebody is asked it because of the way they look, or the way they talk, or the way they act. Maybe I'm just a bit of a bland white male that people just don't feel the need to ask.
Can I just add to that, Sylvia?
Go ahead,
Because
Shimul.
I agree with Alistair. I don't mind being asked, because I mean, I you know, he's absolutely right. You know, it shows that there's a degree of curiosity, and it's nice that somebody wants to know a bit more about you. I suppose it's more about understanding the intention behind the question, really. But I absolutely do not get offended if somebody asks me, because I genuinely think they're interested.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jute?
I think I agree with Shimul. I ask the question a lot as well, depending on the conversation and who I'm speaking to at the time. But I think that where are you from question comes with an answer in the individual's head already, and it's just a verbal confirmation that is kind of waiting on my part. And after a while, being, you know, having the name that I have, Jute, it's not a very common name. I'm used to getting the where are you from. Unless you're familiar with my last name, you know, you kind of have an idea as to where I'm from. But usually that question always has it, the answer is already there. So yes, there is a level of clarification. So do you want to know where I'm from country? Do you want to know where I'm from area? Like, what is the main question that you want to know, that you want me to answer? I think when it starts to become a little bit problematic is once you've answered the question, and then it just keeps on going and keeps on going and keeps on going. And then it becomes like, what are you trying to achieve with this question? Because I've given you the answer.
But Jute, I would likely I would like be that person that would keep going on because I'm interested. You know, I love to know what car a person drives, because I think that's that I wonder. Yeah, well, that says a lot about them. Or I would be asking the question because I'm just nosy. I'm just curious. It's not because I'm trying to make a judgment. It's because I've got this real desire to understand you and who you are. Yeah, and it's everything that goes around it. You know, so what do you have a cat? Do you have a dog? You know, I probably wouldn't ask those questions, but I just build up a picture of a person and their culture in my mind because I think it's a rich tapestry, isn't it? So I would be that person that would keep going and asking questions. I probably wouldn't ask the same question over and over again. I'd ask lots of different questions. So I probably wouldn't be, well, where are you from? No, where are you really from? I might say that, because but I wouldn't go on and on and on about it. I kind of would be talking about, okay, yeah, that's interesting, and can I just explore how that feels, and I'd be that person.
Absolutely. I think that line of questioning is fine. It's more around I'm a people person, and I'm very forthcoming. Like, I have a dog, her name's Nut. You can find out so much about me in about a minute of just meeting me. I think the problem with that, the way the questions are asked, is, as a Black woman myself, you can kind of recognize when certain questioning is not hoping to get a positive remark. Like, there is a look, there is almost a gesture almost. So I don't take offense when I'm asked that question. In fact, I welcome it, because, like I said, I'm very proud. I like who I am. I'm very, very proud of, like, being born in Nigeria, moving to this country, and all of the sort of landmarks in my life. So if I am asked about it, I'll give you all the answers. I think sometimes there is always I don't want to call it a look, but it's the only word I can think of right now. It's a look where I've answered the question, and it's no longer just, yeah, but where are you really from? It's, okay, so you grew up in, and then you grew up in South London, and then there's that look, and then it either stops there, or they just they start asking questions that aren't in relation to the conversation.
Isn't that your perception, though? I mean, my
No,
wife.
I think
My
I've
wife
had
had
questions to know the
yeah.
difference between which one's which.
My wife had her hair in plaits all weekend, and she came out of the bedroom this morning to go to work. We're not in plaits, and I noticed, and I said, "Oh, okay." And she immediately said, "You don't like it, do you? You think I look like?" I said, "No, I don't think that at all. It's just you look very different. You've just assumed that." She said, I've lived with you long enough to know how you think, but I'm not thinking that."
I mean, what do you think, Shimul and Alex, on this? Jute is saying there is a way of knowing when somebody is asking you where you're from, and it's not the genuine, polite, open and honest questioning, the motive behind it. If I am picking up the discussion point here, is that it's something else that's probably not positive. What are your thoughts on that, Shimul and Alex? Shimul.
Yeah, you can tell if someone's genuinely interested and someone who's actually fishing to get a reaction out of you or to make you feel some kind of way.
How can you tell without it being a perspective?
I think it is to do with a look or how someone's mannerisms are, and like intuition as well. You can definitely tell if someone's trying to push buttons or trying to be actually, I want to find out where this person is from. What do we have in common? Like, what can I learn from this person? Or I'm gonna like push this person into a corner and make them feel uncomfortable. I think you could definitely tell the difference between those two.
Wow. Shimul?
And sorry,
Yes.
just to pick up.
Yeah, go ahead, Jute.
Where Alex left off. I think it's she mentioned making someone feel uncomfortable, and going back to the whole, message about belonging. If you notice by reading, obviously I understand not everyone picks up on certain social cues, but certain social cues will give you an idea of, okay, actually, let's change the subject. This person's feeling uncomfortable, especially when you are one of two or one of five in a space of 100. And then all of a sudden, everyone's kind of focused on you, and then you do feel like the odd one out. which obviously isn't representative of feeling like you belong anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point to make, that actually sometimes the intention may well be, we really would like to find out. But then because you're the only one in the room and everyone looking, that automatically can make people feel uncomfortable. People looking at you, you know that you're the only one of your kind in the room. So yeah, absolutely, a really good point. Shimul.
You just, I won't, labour this point, but just to say that sometimes it isn't so much what you say, it's the way that you say it. And I think that's probably where you can probably pick up vibes that this doesn't feel right, the line of questioning doesn't feel right. But I mean, certainly for me, I prefer people to just be direct, rather than if you want to know something for a specific reason, just say it, rather than skirting around the issue with questions that are just creating an uncomfortable situation or causing awkwardness.
But isn't that the problem that we're having now? In the last podcast, when we were talking about some of the issues that we're seeing, Roger Klein, who is research fellow at Middlesex Business University Business School, he talked about the fact that a lot of white colleagues, white people, find it very uncomfortable to approach people from BME communities and to ask them that direct question for fear of feeling, being labeled negatively. What are your thoughts on this, anyone? Are we too sensitive about this?
I
I
think
think
so.
yes.
I think there are times that we are too sensitive about it. I will admit that I've spent times put great effort into trying to be very different, and being safe in that difference, and wanting people to see me differently. So I think that we can get too sensitive about being identified for our individualization.
Jute, thank you.
I think I wouldn't say that we're not too sensitive. I think the world around us is changing, and there is a level of education and re-education almost for everyone, not just people of color or people that fit within an underrepresented group. I think we all need to re-educate ourselves, and there should always be constant learning regardless of what you do and where you live. The world is changing. The business look is changing. Professional world looks different. And in 10 years' time, the conversation shouldn't still be about, oh, I'm not too sure if I can ask someone where they're from. It should really be just about, oh, I know how to ask this question. I'm comfortable asking this question. And being comfortable in the uncomfortable, pretty much what this podcast is about, right?
Absolutely.
Learning how to address the elephant in the room and just feeling comfortable in that space. And I think that's when you can almost, everyone is kind of confident. Everyone's happy. We can all be in a room. I can be the only Black woman in a room and not feel awkward. You can be the only man in a room full of women and not feel awkward and not feel like you have to, change who you are or mask almost to fit into that space.
And I was, as I'm just listening, I'm thinking about how I've always approached that question. Never, like Shimul, never really thought about people asking me that question out of something that's negative. But I always say I was born in the UK. My parents are from Jamaica, because I think that's what they're looking for. I don't necessarily think that they want me to say, oh, I'm from West Berkshire or from wherever I'm living. I think that that's what they're asking because I'm not indigenous to Britain, and I'm okay with that. I don't, like Alex, I don't feel a sense of belonging to the UK. I don't feel a sense of belonging to Jamaica. I don't feel a sense of belonging to any country. I feel a belonging to my home and belonging to my faith. So again, we're going to talk about this a little later. How do organizations then go about belonging when it is so susceptible? It feels like it's something that we probably can't achieve.
I think I can jump in here. So with BYP Network, it's kind of what we do, right? We are a community of over 150,000 Black professionals on a global scale. And we are, constantly having these conversations with corporations on a daily basis on how they can be a bit more authentic in how they work and engage with talent outside of what they expect or what the norm might look like. And belonging is personal to each individual, but at the same time, there is a level of recognizing each sort of different groups and different experiences, and creating a safe space for these individual groups to talk about their personal experiences. Like me bringing up the story about my ideal job and it being probably the worst thing I've ever done in my whole career for it. And feeling like I can talk about it and not be like, it won't be used against me for complaining about a previous employer. So when you look at workspaces and work and just work as a whole, it's making the most out of those affinity groups or ERGs and hearing what they have to say, giving them a platform to share what they've learned or what they're working on. And this is not just for just one, it's for everyone. Let everyone feel comfortable to speak and act and be who they are, regardless of what box they might fit in. And then you have people who don't want to identify with any of the boxes, like yourself and Alex said. You don't feel like you belong to any country specifically. You belong in you feel most comfortable in your home. That you should still feel free to talk about it. Yes, I am a woman of color, but I might not necessarily want to identify as I just want to be who I am. I think that's the most important thing. And I'm so happy that Gen Z have taken it by the reins and they are here for it. They fit in nothing. They don't want to fit in any box as well. So it's great to see. It's great to see. So I don't think it's not going to be solved. I think we are on that way. We just have to keep going. We can't slow down.
Yeah, really, really aptly put. And I think it's about celebrating difference. We shouldn't get hung up on difference. I think the UK, the world is becoming a lot more diverse. I always quote this report that I read from Imperial College that says by 2032, England is going to be have an increase in population by 8 million, and 3.5 million of those are going to be non-native. So culture is not going to go away. And so what we need to do is to inspire society on a whole to get over difference, not to ignore it, but to leverage it, because everyone's got something to contribute. And let's not get hung up on the fact that this is somebody that looks different, speaks differently, has a different accent, has a different gender identity. And so we get locked into that, which is where I think we're trying to emerge from.
I agree, Sylvia. There is so much joy. There is so much joy in diversity. I don't think it should be a source of conflict.
Oh, I love it. I think the more different, the better.
So let me, just before I go into that next question, so what do you think then is the issue with getting hung up? Because it is there, otherwise the diversity agenda would have gone a lot further. What is it that is preventing it, in your opinion, to celebrating this difference so we can create this belonging? What do you think are the issues?
Well, you know what, it's really funny because I often ask people in where I work in the NHS, how many of them feel that they can bring their whole self to work? It's quite an interesting question to ask, really, because it does give you a really kind of good understanding of what the culture of the organisation is really like. And the vast majority always say that they feel that they can't bring their whole self to work. Which is,
but can I just jump in there, Shimul?
Yeah.
Is that because they feel that if they did, that they're scared of any potential outcome, or is it genuinely that the organization is not created a culture that inspires and encourages people to bring? Because that's two different things, right?
Yeah, there's bringing your whole self to work, and then there's being your whole self at work, isn't there? I suppose it's how you interpret it. And I think a lot of people certainly feel that they can't, whatever their background, can't potentially be there or bring their whole self to work or be their whole self, because they're you know, they may have particular views or, you know, preferences or attitudes, beliefs that might not sit right with their organisation. So there's lots of elements, isn't there, that you might feel you have to park at the door. And when we talked about belonging in the when we started this podcast, you know, Alex used the phrase home, didn't she use the word home? I suppose it's where you feel psychologically safe, isn't it? That's where you can feel you can genuinely bring your whole self and be your whole self. And let's face it, not all workplaces do create an environment where you are psychologically safe. There's always something in the back of your mind that always thinks that, you know, whatever I say, it could be career suicide. Whatever I do could be career suicide.
Don't you think that we think naturally we are different things to different people? I don't think I'd be in employment now if I was really Alistair in the workplace. I'd have got my cards a long time ago. And just on that point, I don't know at what time and in what place we can be truly 100% who we are. I think we are different things for different people in different times. I have to say, even as I would go as far as saying, even in the home, I don't know that you can always be your whole self. That's what you would strive to be. Yeah, and having worked in memory care environments where a person is not who they were, but they are who they are. That they are still a person and still an individual. But we're different in different places for different reasons.
Interesting. Jute, were you going to come in, or Alex?
Yeah, I was. I think I love the question that Shimul asks, within the trust at the NHS, which is, do you ever feel comfortable to sort of be your whole self at work? And your whole self and your authentic self are two different things. I think the difference is when you look at it from a person of color's point of view or a woman's point of view, a woman that's working in a male-dominated industry point of view, it's very, very different, because we are never, ever truly ourselves. We are always thinking about the next move or what we say or how we look or how we present. And it's not because it's not because we want to. I don't want to go into work and feel like, okay, and now I put the work Jute hat on and then take the work. Like, I should feel comfortable to, you know, go into a meeting, look a certain way, but still work just as hard as I would always work. And I think when you look at it from the point of view as and I don't really like using BAME or BME, because I think we're way past that now. We need to be using original ways of identifying people. If I'm Black, I'm Black. If I'm Asian, I'm Asian. Wherever I am, whatever I am, I should be able to use that word. And I think everyone should be comfortable with using those words as self-identifying characteristic words. So like I was saying, when I do come as my authentic self, it's usually this, right? Long hair, hoops. And I've always been like that. And I've worked with FTSE 500, FTSE 250. I've been in meeting rooms with, you know, CEOs and people that are on exec boards. And for me, this is me. Again, with that same job, I was told basically not to have braids. So I had braids in my hair. And I had an event coming up, and my manager was like, "Oh, are you going to change your hairstyle?" But that's normal. I change my hairstyle all the time. And I was like, "Oh, no, I wasn't planning on it." And then she kind of followed up with, "Oh, because, you know, we have this event, and I don't want to name and shame. We have this event coming up, and it's a very high end, because I work in corporate hospitality and I do a lot of sort of very high scale and high end events." And it was almost saying, without saying, I had to change my hairstyle back to the straight look, or, you know, maybe not have the braids. So when you talk about authenticity and being your authentic self at work, my authentic self wanted to have my braids in, but I was then told by management to maybe change it. And
totally unacceptable.
It wasn't no, you don't have to, but it was the head tilt. So again, with the whole line of questioning, it was like, "Oh, are you sure you don't want to change it?" Basically, change your hairstyle. So there is always that level of what version do you want to see, or what version is more palatable almost as an individual?
Or what version am I going to be brave enough to be? You know, who gets to decide who my authentic self is, who my sort of whole self is? And I think it's things like this. What I was going to say, some of the thoughts that are coming through this discussion is belonging to when we feel psychologically safe, when we understand the difference between our whole self and our authentic self. But it doesn't help if we're working in organizations that are not diverse, because that doesn't help us to bring our authentic self to work. And it doesn't help if there are policies and procedures and habits that still weighs towards one culture over another. And I think it's when you truly break those systemic barriers that then we begin to feel that we're going to get this authenticity coming in.
I know I'm certainly guarded about, you know, how much of me I truly open myself up and expose myself to others in terms of the way I really am. And it's true, absolutely, Alistair's right, it even happens even in your home, within your personal relationships. There are certain things that, you know, I probably wouldn't say to my husband because I kind of know what the reaction would be, and to avoid that reaction you just don't say it. You don't want the argument and all the rest. And so, yeah.
So are we saying that this sense of belonging and this strapline, bringing your whole authentic self to work, is perhaps a utopia state that actually, if we progress towards it, we'll get further? What are your thoughts on that?
I think everybody, like everyone is saying, you get a different version. Everybody gets a different version of you wherever you go. I mean, you be the best version of yourself for that person in front of you. You know how to interact with them. You know what they believe in, mostly. You know what they're into, what they're not into, definitely not what to bring up, and what you can relate on as well. So yeah, I think everybody gets a different version. And within that relationship or friendship, there's a kind of level of comfortability that you will go to, and you won't go above or below that, really.
Yeah. I mean, I do agree. I think I think I might have been wrong here, but the question was mainly around sort of work, like, you know, do you bring your true authentic self to your workplace? And I think it's definitely significantly harder to be your true authentic self when you are from an underrepresented group, because you have to be the version that you think is more palatable or more accepted, especially as, and I'm talking about myself here, as a Black woman, changing all of my hairstyles. Like when I was looking for work, even in the pandemic, I wouldn't have braids in. And, you know, sometimes I play with color. I wouldn't have certain colors in my hair because I wouldn't want that to be used against me, or almost like make me look not professional. And I know it does. I know in my head it shouldn't, but you never know who's going to open up the laptop or who's going to be in the meeting room. Not everyone is as accepting of individuals and their different characteristics of their personality. So there is always going to be an element of, no, you can never really be your true authentic self at work, unless people address it head on within the office, within whatever space you find yourself professionally.
Do you think, Jute, and it's a bit of an off the wall question, but because I ask myself it sometimes, is do I look and sound to others how I look and sound to myself? I look in the mirror, I hear my voice. It's a bit like when you listen to a recording of yourself later on, it's excruciating. I hate listening to myself. I hate looking at myself. That's why I've got short hair, so I don't have to look in the mirror in the morning. I jest a little bit, but I wonder, do we really look and sound the same to others as we do to ourselves?
I think that's based on individuals. I think everyone hates the sound of their own voice played back. There must be like some sites about that somewhere, but no, I think it's different for everyone. Some people might feel 100% confident in how they look and how they sound and how they present, and it's kind of like what you get is what you see. And again, with myself, it's always going to be what you get is what you see. But that's me. If I'm not in the next person's head, I'm not in your head, Alistair. I don't know what perception you're, off of first glance, what image has, or what version has kind of been created, because we're all human. We all, you see someone and there's certain things that come to mind straight away off the bat before even them speaking. And for some individuals, it's not always it's not always a positive. It's always maybe a positive or underhanded comment that comes afterwards, after the positive. So it's never straightforward.
So I've got an experience which is not dissimilar, but I'll share it with you insofar as I normally wear a white shirt and smart trousers to work, but for quite a while I haven't. I've worn jeans and a jumper and a t-shirt, and I'm frequently asked, "Oh, this is odd. Why aren't you wearing your white shirt and your smart trousers? That's Alistair. So what's going on, Alistair?" And people then are worried about a change in my appearance. No, actually, I just want to feel comfortable. I like to go to work in a white shirt and trousers because it helps me separate work from home. But equally, I sometimes like to put my comfortable shoes on and wear my t-shirt because I want to be different. I don't want the white shirt. I don't want to be so formal. And people notice about it. If there's a change in your identity, a bit like you with Jute were talking about your hair and the choice of your hair, and you needed to you felt the expectation of your employer was that you would conform to the identity. But I'd created my identity of the white shirt and the smart trousers, and then I was making a change to it.
Yeah, and I think what happens in organizations, there's an assumption, but certainly from a generational point of view, we're seeing that the latter part of the younger millennials and the Gen Zs don't care about conformity. Their unity is not uniformity. They want to come in, they want to be themselves, and they will run away from organizations. They won't want to work with organizations that are trying to fit everyone into that type of mold. So for people listening, and if you have that kind of culture in your workplace or wherever you spend your working life, it's not healthy to try and force people into this uniformity and forcing people. The whole point of difference is Black people do wear braids. That's kind of what we do, and we do change our hair. We wear lots of different styles, and men who are managers may not want to put on a jacket and a tie and a suit. And I think this is where the culture needs to really kick in, and where we see some of those microaggressions happening, they need to be challenged. These are the things, but too often they're not challenged, and we see that people conform. It's called covering, by the way, Jute, when you kind of adhere and conform. It's called covering. I cover and do a version of myself so that I can fit in. Do you think there is a tendency for people from Black minority ethnic groups to automatically assume they, as in we, don't belong because we are the minority, and because people are more likely to ask us, where are you from? Do you think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy that we automatically make ourselves not belonging? Shimul?
I think that's inevitable. It really is. I know certainly when I started working in Norfolk and Waveney, it was really, bear in mind I'm from Leicester, which is a really multicultural city. And then I started working in Norfolk and Waveney, and it is a very white county, and the organisations that I work with are predominantly white. So I remember the first meeting that I went to face, and I naturally gravitated towards somebody that looked like me. I almost couldn't believe that they looked like me. I actually kind of went up to them and said, "Are you actually really Asian? Really, are you Asian in Norfolk? What are you doing in Norfolk?" But you naturally gravitate towards people that look like you, because then you've got a sense of you got, I guess, you feel comfortable, don't you? There's a safety net there when you've got somebody that looks like you in the room. But I know that I certainly feel quite intimidated when I'm the only person of colour in a meeting, even if it's in a virtual meeting and I'm the only brown face. I find it quite intimidating.
In what way do you find that intimidating?
I find it intimidating because so quite often, especially because of the role that I do, which is equality, diversity, inclusion, I'm naturally seen as the panacea for it all. I've got the answers to everything, and they looked towards me for the answers. And actually, I'm, my lived experience only goes so far. I can't speak on behalf of all Asians. I'm from Bangladesh, and that, we're not one homogenous group. So to think that I'm a subject matter expert for everything, I think is wholly inappropriate and wrong. But that's what they naturally, assume. And I find that quite intimidating, because you happen to be from a particular protected characteristic. Everybody just assumes that you are an expert in that field. And they're looking to you for the answers. So yeah, I find those situations very intimidating. But also, when you are the only person of colour, you're almost carrying the weight and the responsibility of everybody else from a underrepresented group on your shoulders. And you feel you have to be the voice for them. And that again is quite intimidating when you are, you're a minority and everybody else doesn't seem to be showing any particular affinity with that, or a particular allyship with that as well, and you're the lone voice in that space.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, and for really giving us a bit of an insight into what it can feel like when we are sort of in that minority and the roles that we play. Anything to add, Jute?
Yes. I mean, I that must be so tiring, Shimul. I mean, I've found myself in that position where I'm almost the advocate for all individuals that identify, that are Black or of ethnic minority, and I try not to anymore, because I think there's so much information out there now. I am one person. I'm not like every single Black female that you will come across in your life. And there's so many variations of us. Like, you have Africans, you've got British Africans, people that identify as British Caribbeans, or, we all have very different personalities. And then you go to the Americas, which is a whole different side of things. And to answer your question, Sylvia, I don't think it's self-fulfilling. I think, the word racist and racism is one overarching word. And then you have things like microaggressions. And I think this is something that I've come to deal with in, my whole life. There's something, it's kind of like chipping away at you, like when you're carving and it's just chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. So it's not that we don't bring it on ourselves. We experience it day in, day out, day in, day out. You go to a different space and it's the same thing. The grass is never greener after a while. And you just think, oh, maybe this place would be different, and it's not. So it's tiring. It's tiring being the only voice of a Black person. It's tiring being the only Black person in the room. I work in sales, heavily male dominated and heavily white dominated. It's been hard for me to build this shell of nothing will get at me, but it still does. It does. Especially with the pandemic, it was almost like this protective bubble for most Black people, or most people of ethnic minority, like someone that felt like they didn't belong and worked in a space where they just weren't represented. It was a bubble. And then we were let back out. And I was like, oh yeah, this is why I hated coming into the office. So it's not that we don't want to do these things. It's not that we're expecting these issues. It just, we know it, we see it every single day. We experience it. So it does get tiring, and maybe I will walk into a room sometimes and just be like, I wonder what the conversation is going to be, and who's going to be the first one to say, oh, your hair's lovely. Where's it? What's your hair? And no. Oh, you've changed your hair again. Like, you kind of anticipate it, and in a way, maybe we shouldn't, but we've had years and years of the same questions in different scenarios. You kind of know how it goes, so you kind of expect it. I think there was one time where I changed my hair in a new job and no one asked me. Eventually the question did come, but it wasn't on the first day. And even I was shocked. I was like, wow, okay, this is different. So, and then, you know, it's sometimes, again, it's out of curiosity, and curiosity is fine. But when it's being constant and it's never, not always curiosity, is when it becomes a problem. So I don't think we go into situations, you know, expecting that it's not going to be great because we are different or because we are Black. We don't have that. We don't go with that mindset.
There was something that you said, there was some language that you used that pricked me a little bit there, Jute. And that was, you said, there are so many variations of us. Now, there's so many variations of me. There's so many variations of everybody. I wondered why you needed to say that.
I think because in most cases, there is always a stereotype. And regardless of what you identify as, nationality, ethnicity wise, if you look a certain way, you are instinctively painted and described with that stereotype. And I think for me, one I've always dealt with is the angry Black woman. I'm not angry. I'm passionate, but if I'm very expressionate and I'm very like this, it's kind of like, oh, calm down, Jute. I can't tell you how many times I'm just talking and someone has just been like, Jute, calm down. Calm down for what? I've done nothing. I was just talking. Or I'm speaking and then I'm hushed and I'm trying to, you know, pick up from where I was. And it's like, oh, well, you've been talking and I'm like, I've literally said 2 words. So it's not, when I say variations, it's, yes, there's so many different versions, and similar with English people or white people in general. Yes, there's variations of you, but it's not the same. You're not being painted with the same brush that we are.
But isn't that part of the issue when we use language, that we say there are so many variations of us, that we think that way? There are so many variations of all of us in this room now, you know, that we are different. And I'm struggling a little bit to see whether it's my uncomfortableness with that language, or that you feel the need to catalogue it in that way.
I don't know if it's uncomfortable. I'm very comfortable with the fact that there are, you know, different Black women out there that identify with different or resonate with different versions, so to speak. But I can't speak for every Black woman, but then I'm expected to. So when I use the word variation, it's because I've got a group of friends, a wide group of friends of different races and different personalities and different, everyone individually is different, but we are still within a friendship group. But I can tell you there's been times where in a group of maybe 6, 2 Black girls, 1 Asian, a couple of white, like we instinctively are looked at, and I say the 2 Black girls are looked at, and it's like we'd go out for dinner and it's like, oh, like going to a members club, for instance. Oh, where's your card? Who invited you? And I'm on a table full of 6 other women or 6 other people, but I'm the one that gets asked the question. Or I'm in a meeting room and I'm speaking, my voice is slightly louder. I work in sales, I'm very expressionate. And it's like, oh, Jute, is everything okay? I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with the way I speak. I'm just I might be louder than everybody else in the room. So when I use that word variation, might not be the best word, but when I use variation, it's because there's so many different people out there and everyone identifies differently. But for some reason, in most spaces, the first thing when I'm in a room, if I'm slightly different or slightly louder or anything out of what people expect, the instant brush is angry Black woman. And it's the first thing that comes to mind without even knowing me.
So let me just bring Shimul in here. Shimul, I noticed that you identified as brown. Do you relate to the experiences that Jute is talking about in terms of some of those microaggressions?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly aware of my the first thing that people see is the color of my skin, and so they base and you know, a lot of people do base or make assumptions based on the first thing that they see, which is the color of my skin. So I'm, you know, I am acutely aware of that, and I am probably more so when I am in an environment where I am the only person of color. But I don't, I mean, I don't experience the same things that Jute's just outlined. No, I wouldn't say that I have done, no.
And I'm going to bring Alex in before I ask the last the other question. I don't know that I experienced that, but maybe it's because I'm not looking for it. I say my prayers and walk into the office. I just, I suppose I'm not looking for it. People would have to be very, very overt and very, very obvious for me to pick up on any signs. I'm known for saying, Alistair may have heard me saying, if I'm invited to a meeting, I belong. I've got something to offer. I'm going to sit around that table. I'm going to contribute. I'm going to be my best self as much as I can be because I've been invited. And maybe that's my way of coping with what could be the microaggressions around, or being in environments where I am the only one. I do agree with Jute, I do agree with Shimul that it can get very wearing. But I'm going to bring in Alex because you're ethnic minority in church. Do you want to share your thoughts about that, because people may not know that about you?
Yeah, so obviously I attend Sylvia's church. So we go to the same church, and I am literally the only white person in there at probably 95% of Sundays I am. And to be honest, most of my friends are Black or Asian. I don't know how that's happened. If it's to do with things we share in common or my area, or I'm not sure, but it's just happened that way, and I feel most comfortable there. And I've been to quite a few churches. This is the church that I felt most comfortable in. And there may be some things that are said in church sometimes where I feel a little bit like maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe this doesn't like, it doesn't mean anything to me as such. I do feel like, oh, maybe everyone's looking at me sometimes. But I say to myself, these people in this room, we have to go through this every single day, like in normal day society. If I feel funny or embarrassed or silly just for like 2 minutes of my life, I'm just going to deal with it. Like, it's nothing. And I feel like I just feel more at home there than I do have in any other church that I've been to. And that does say something. I don't know why, but I've been there over a year now. I still continue to go. At times it's still uncomfortable sometimes, like I said, but that's my home now, and I'll continue to go there.
Wow. So hearing that belonging from a different point of view, that actually there are occasions when other people are the ethnic minority, the minority group, not the ethnic minority, but the minority group there, and what it feels like. So I'm just going to go on to a question that I need to ask. I think we touched on it earlier, but this is now towards Alistair and Alex. So we've been having this really rich and conversation about belonging, and we're drilling down into lived experiences, into people's perceptions, into kind of thinking about, you know, belonging and what it feels like, especially from an ethnic minority perspective, what it feels like to be asked that question, where do you belong? And we know that there was that big ooh-ha in the news some time ago with the lady Hussey. So the question that I wanted to ask, and this is to Alistair and to Alex, because I believe there could be some education here. Why do people from non-BME backgrounds frequently ask people from BME backgrounds where they are from? So, Alistair.
I think I touched on it before. For me, I can only speak for myself, and I will try and generalize it out a little bit. But I think it's about, from me, it's a genuine sense of interest in something that, or somebody that I may not have necessarily have been brought up in that cultural difference, or had the experiences. I think it's modernizing the unmodern world, isn't it? And modernizing our unmodernized world, and the world was a very different place when I was a child, and I Jute said it's about authenticity, isn't it? That's my authenticity. That's where I'm coming from. But that's not necessarily where other people are coming from. You know, people a generation ahead of me, or 2 generations ahead of me, will think very differently about Britain, England, down my children. And I guess we're just a different world, and we're modernizing, and I think it's a journey. I think it's part of our, it's a part of that journey that we, or some people, ask the question with different motives. I think sometimes, though, it's about, and we said it at the beginning, it's about the motives, and it's about, I said to Jute, I would be that person that would keep going and keep asking and asking and asking, because I'm genuinely interested in Jute, and, you know, I'm just, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
And I can think of other things in life that we are modernizing on. The world is just a very different place. Acceptance, things that weren't accepted when I was a child are now accepted. Things that were accepted when I was a child are now not accepted and not socially appropriate.
Yeah, thank you. So, Jute, let me just ask you a question. I think we've just temporarily lost Alex. Is it about the question being changed then? Because typically, modern language is, where do you come from? And as I said earlier, I normally say, I was born in the UK and my parents are from Jamaica. And then some people say, no, I'm from a specific location within the UK. Do you think it's about changing the question so that it's more clearer in terms of what the person's intentions are?
That's really interesting, because I do agree with Alistair. We are on a journey. It's not going to be fixed in a year, in 10 years even. Rome wasn't built in a day, so we don't expect it to change so quickly. I personally don't mind the question. The question is never the problem. It's where the question, where it goes, or where you end up, where the question ends up at. Or, like I said, the look, the remark, it's the follow-up. What is the follow-up like? Where is the follow-up leading you to? And I'm all for curiosity. I'm, like I said, again, very, very open as an individual. So I'm like, ask away. You want to know more? I can keep going. And I will always keep going. But then I usually stop at a point when I feel like that question is not going to benefit me. Like, what are you learning? What are you getting from this image of me going further and further and further and further, and like, oh yeah, your mum, your dad, like, you don't know anything about these places, so why do you keep asking? If I'm like, okay, Nigeria, whereabouts in Nigeria? Actually, that question shows me curiosity wise, or maybe you've heard or you've met different people from my country and you want to know more about it, or you want to know if, you know, this individual was similar to me in a way. Curiosity is fine. It's just, if I get to the point of Nigeria and then it's like, oh yeah, you've got that problem with the you know, the stereotypes of what, you know, Nigerians unfortunately do come with. And then it's like, well, is that where you were hoping to get to? Did you want me to talk badly about my country? Like, I'm very proud of that, of my country. I know where and all the other things that come with it. So maybe I am a little bit protective sometimes, but then again, very open to curiosity, very open to talking. I don't think the question needs to be changed. I think people, one, need to learn how to read the room as we grow, as we, you know, as we learn and move around different groups of people. We need to learn how to read the room. We need to learn how to be okay with not maybe someone not answering that question, but like, I don't really feel like I have to.
Yeah. Interesting. And I like that. Read the room. Shimul, have you got anything? Do you think that question needs to be changed? Do people need to be very specific if they're asking us where we're from? Should they say, where is your ethnic origin? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think I said earlier, it's, you know, be specific really about what it is based on what the intention of the question actually is. So if you want more details about someone's background, and be specific about what detail that information is that you want from them, rather than just skirting around the issue. But like I said before, I don't mind anybody asking me anything, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has of me. And that question of where you're actually from, I usually just, you know, if I tell them where I'm from and then they kind of look at me as if to say, and they give me that look to say that that's not quite the answer that they were expecting me to give, I then kind of, I preempt the next question, and I just say, oh, you mean, well, I'm assuming you mean what my heritage is, and then I kind of go into a bit more information myself. I offer it before they even ask.
And you're okay with them asking about the heritage.
Yeah.
You're okay
Definitely.
with that. Yeah. And yeah, it does come back to this same thing about, you know, I always wonder, what are you going to do with the information? What are you going to do with all of this questioning? What are you going to do with it? And sometimes I suppose people just want to build rapport. Just before I ask the last question, Alex, I can see you're disappearing in and out. Alex, do you ask that question? And even if you don't, what do you think is the reason behind, in your opinion, white people asking people from non-BME communities where they're from?
I have asked it in the past. It is a curiosity thing for me. I like to, especially if I'm talking to a Black person, for some reason, I don't know why, I like to know if they're African or West Indian. And I don't know why, but in my head, that says to me what things I'm going to get on with them with, or like what food they like. And we can talk about food, or we can talk about music. I don't know why. I guess I just feel like that helps me, I don't know, like arrange someone in my head, like get to know them better. But it's not. It's never a personal thing. It's a genuine, I want to know more, so I can tell you that, oh yeah, I do that as well, or we do that. Like some kind of common ground.
I think Alex is right. It's about making a connection, isn't it? And it's important as humans to make a connection. And so the only way you can really make a connection is if you are probing a bit more, isn't it? Finding a connection with somebody.
That's right.
It's about making the connections. It's about building relationships. It's about recognizing differences and celebrating those differences. It's about being okay with the differences. It's called cultural competence, where we know enough of our culture, and when we know enough of other cultures, and we can still coexist. And there isn't one culture trying to dominate the other, but we respect that. You know, there's some cultures that do lots of fasting, and there's some cultures that deal with death differently, and some cultures have different ways of holding events. And I think it's when we don't think, oh, well, that's weird, and that's strange, but understanding actually that's something different to my culture, and I've got an opportunity to lean in and to find out more and to make myself more culturally competent, or I can stand back and say, well, that's weird, and I kind of just close the door. And I think it's probably trying to understand where we are individually, and that obviously then builds up into the organizational culture, or the culture that we spend our time with, especially in society as well. So what would you say to people who may be struggling with a sense of belonging in the workplace or in society? So we've covered work, we've covered, local community through churches. What would you say to people? So let me ask Alex first.
As a self-employed person now, it's a bit different for me because I make home wherever I go. I have to make other people feel comfortable because I'm coming into their space, or they're coming to see me at my studio. But for people that work around a lot of different people every day, I'd say try and find that one person that you can kind of open up to. I don't think it's everything to feel completely comfortable at work. It's where you make your money. I mean, if it is your passion, then run with that. It's your passion. So it doesn't really matter who you do or don't get on with solely and wholly at work. But just make it as bearable as possible. Find that one person that you can kind of relate and get on with. But I think if you have a good rapport with your manager, I think that really helps. Whenever I've worked anywhere, I've always made sure that I have a good relationship with my manager and that they know exactly what's going on with me personally and at work. So having that rapport with the manager at least, and if there isn't even that, or I don't know, I'd really look at somewhere else to work if work is that bad. Yeah, I would
Find another job.
Yeah,
but I like what you said. I like what you said. Try and find a person that you can connect with. And I like the idea of bringing in the manager, because then they hopefully should be the person that, if needs be, you can speak to or raise concerns that you may have with. So thanks very much for that, Alex. And then let me come to Shimul. What would you say to someone who's struggling with belonging in the workplace or society?
Yeah. Not too dissimilar to what Alex has just said. You need to find a place where you do feel a sense of belonging. So if it's at work, find some peer support somewhere, be that with a staff network group or particular colleagues that you have an affinity with. And two, I think certainly, somebody said to me that if the room has stopped listening to you, then maybe it's time to leave the room. So it's kind of, find your place where you do feel safe.
I don't believe in staying in a job where just because you do that job you have to stay there. If you're not happy, I'm very quick to hand in my notice. If it's not serving me well spiritually, no, it's not happening.
Wow. Okay. So I'm hearing that, peer support, find somebody to connect with, don't tolerate, environments that are not supportive. Alistair.
I'm struggling with this one a little bit because as someone that has had profound episodes of feeling rejected, I can see it from the other side, and sometimes it's desperate, isn't it? The more you try and find peer support, the more rejected you may feel, because there isn't anybody like you. There isn't anybody that you can trust. There isn't anybody that you can share, or indeed if there is, and then that betrayal. And I think trust is a big thing, isn't it? And can we genuinely trust colleagues that we haven't chosen to spend the majority of our life with. We spend the majority of our life at work, don't we? And I think what Shimul and Alex have said does resonate, that it's natural for us to try and gravitate towards somebody that we feel comfortable with. If I'm honest with you, in this group, I've naturally I feel like I've become a buddy with one person more than the other, and I've felt intimidated by one person's perceived intellect, and you know, there's all these sorts of emotions going on, and I think something about try, and I'm a person in a glass house, so I shouldn't throw stones, and I should practice what I preach. But something about trying to be yourself, and I'm contradicting myself now, because whenever I ever felt that I can be my true self, my whole self, as we spoke about before, I don't know how many times do I feel imposter syndrome kicking in? Probably every day. Yeah. So you find, if you're not comfortable with the environment, there's layers of things to go through. You know, do you find somebody that you're comfortable with, or do you fight or flight? Do you run? You can't keep running, can you? Because the world's a small place. So I don't know that it's necessarily the responsibility of the individual. I think it's the responsibility of others, really, of being really tuned in, and certainly I've done that in organizations I've worked in, that, you know, is it really the responsibility of the individual to struggle with a sense of belonging? Isn't it the other way around? Isn't it about the organization's need to wrap around and feel comfortable, and enable people to feel belonged and belonging?
But don't you think a lot of people are very good at acting as well? I can say that I've felt uncomfortable in a lot of jobs, but no one would ever know. I'll act like I'm completely fine. So I could be completely isolated in that job, but no one would ever know, because I act as if I'm confident on my own, or I'm fine on my own. But inside I'm dying, and I hate it until this very minute till 5 p.m. and I go home.
And sometimes we have to be careful what we wish for, because sometimes what we've actually got is a whole lot better than it could be.
Yes, yeah. And I hear that. I almost heard mixed journey, Alistair, sorry, when you were talking. I just heard that it's not one thing. Something I might slightly build on or disagree. I do feel that we need to bring something to the table as well. Organizations should do that wraparound, and they should build working environments that welcome and are culturally curious, and you know, that they're not trying to make everyone look and sound and act the same. But I think I need to bring something to the table too. I got to rock up with something, because who is the workplace but the individuals that work there? So I've got to, when I'm dealing with my peers, show some kind of respect and cultural competence. I can't leave it all up to the organization. So I would put it down to me doing my bit as well in that space, just to build on from what you said, Alistair. And last but not least, Jute, what would you say to someone who's struggling?
I agree with everybody. I really do. I initially was just going to say leave it at that, just leave. And the reason why is because as an organization, it is your job to make sure that when an employee is working in your office or step foot into the office, you are making sure that mentally they are comfortable. Physically, they should be able to work. If they're ill, you would send them home, right? You'd make sure they take a sick day. So with organizations, there is a huge part on their side, or a huge percentage on their side, for them to make sure that it is as inviting and welcoming for every individual, regardless. And your affinity groups, your ERGs play a huge part, but also you've got the people management teams, you've
Mhm.
got, you know, looking at HR, you've got executive sponsors from, you know, senior leadership. It comes from the top. It has to make its way down. I was reading an article was it today or Friday, where it said, you know, about 43% of people managers are tired and don't consider diversity and inclusion and equity as important as they publicly say. They don't really feel like it's like that because they're too busy. They've got so many things going on. They're just too busy, understandably. And this is why we have all these different opportunities and roles that are now made available. But essentially, if you are so unhappy in your role, you do not feel supported, you do not feel like you belong, you're coming in every day and you're dreading it, regardless of whatever situation is making you dread it, leave. The grass isn't always greener, but you can continue to find somewhere where you truly belong. Because I think we spend about 75%, depending on what year you started working, of your whole life in a work environment. If you can't find like-minded individuals or people that are allies and want to be around you and know you and enjoy you and everything about you at work, and this is your work version, because obviously authentic and different versions, this is the work version of you. If that's not accepted, go and find somewhere else that is accepted. Come to BYP.
There's a nice plug.
Nice little plug, but no, but seriously, this is why I do what I do, because I've experienced different versions of it along the way, and we need more organizations like BYP. There needs to be more that is opening doors and making the uncomfortable conversations comfortable and allowing for people to be who they are and still presenting them as a full, whole human, regardless of them being Black.
I just love this, and I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. It's been absolutely amazing, and I've certainly taken some things away for me. My thing is really thinking about: am I operating with my true, authentic self, or am I operating with my whole self? It's about making connections. It's about being curious. It's about reading the room. The list goes on and on, but the one thing that's come through all of this is that belonging is so subjective. It's a perspective, and it's not something that's going to be achieved in the next, 2, 3, 4 years. It's an ongoing journey. I want to thank all of my guests today for taking part in Zoud's Zone of Uncomfortable Debate. A big thank you to Alistair Betts, to Shimul Haider, to Jute Ajayi and Alex Douglas for being willing to sit on the hot seat in Zoud and to debate. Now, if you want to contact these amazing people, find out more about what they do in their roles, want to connect with them and have further discussions, then you can connect with them on LinkedIn. And we'll put another page in at the end for you to see where you can contact them from. So on behalf of my guests, I want to wish you a wonderful day and thank you so much for listening. Until next time.